Hello and welcome to the Macon Atlanta podcast, where we are in conversation with Atlanta innovators and community builders. And today's episode is perfect for any parent who wants to raise kids who will eat vegetables and who aren't picky eaters, and really anybody who wants to be healthy and navigate our complex food system well. We're talking today with Chef Asata Reid. She's a chef, an entrepreneur, public speaker, a podcast host, and really a luminary for all things health and wellness in Atlanta. I learned a ton from today's episode. I came away inspired. Thank you, Asata, and enjoy the episode. I was doing the intro for this podcast, and I wasn't even quite sure what to call you between, I think I went with chef, luminary, podcast host, entrepreneur, certainly. How do you think about your kind of professional identity and how do you describe it?
So I would say that was a pain point for a very long time. I think my professional journey, I've worn many different hats. And so I present however I needed to for whoever was asking. Entrepreneur is like a safe space to throw everything underneath. But I think as I evolved and gained expertise in different areas, I became less ashamed of being a jack of all trades, master of none, and really stepped into what the power of that is. I do have multiple strengths, and I am a dynamic individual, and I can show up and be powerful in a lot of different spaces. So I don't need to trim the descriptors away. I just got to find a way to communicate it so that other people understand it. So what does that look like? A lot of times people will have a need. I need to find out what the need is, and then I show up how I show up.
What are like the big rock things that you spend your time on?
My passion projects?
Sure.
Okay. So currently I'm a health educator specialist with Kaiser Permanente. And in that role, which sounds really fancy, I facilitate classes to help people get empowered around their health conditions. So what I'm looking for are changes in outcomes. So quit smoking, lose weight, manage diabetes, things of that nature. And in that population, I'm usually working with people middle age and older. With Small Bites Adventure Club, we work with the opposite end of the bell curve. These are the littles. So we're looking at, pre-K, early child care education, anywhere from, I'd say, age 2 to 5. And in that realm, we're introducing them to fresh produce so that they grow up knowing what it is and loving it and having these food education experiences so that nutrition isn't divorced from their food. Growing and producing food isn't divorced from eating food. Like, it's a whole child experience around produce. And the teachers love it, and the admin loves it, and the parents love it. So it's just a big win there. I have a podcast that I co-host on WABE called Savory Stories, and it's about the food history and culture of Atlanta. It's, and being from Atlanta, it's really great. My co-host, Akila, is such a great historian because she'll bring these stories to life, about the longstanding diversity and culture in Atlanta. And then we just kind of go through all these rabbit holes of what food is doing now. What else is going on? I'll be launching Asaya Wellness Group. That is the coaching that I'll be doing independently, small group and individual coaching. And again, that is about turning your intention into attainment. There are so many people with goals sitting inside of them, just like eggs in a chicken, you can't get it out like an egg-bound hen. And so my goal is really to kind of give you the tools to turn that intention into a reality. And so that's going to be coming down the pipeline next.
How close or far away is our food and what we're putting in our body from our actual nutritional needs? And what are some of those big gaps?
In America, I would think the gaps are probably bigger than anywhere else because we have so much land and it has been monocropped for so long. Your food is only as good as your dirt. Now we're having to supplement the dirt specifically with certain nutrients just so the plants will grow and produce. But that's not their optimal condition. And the livestock are simply eating what's being produced from this bereft soil. And then we're eating the plants and the livestock from this artificially enhanced bereft soil. We got to get back to the dirt. And you can't, well, I'm not going to say you can't, but the scale at which we produce food makes that tough. So then the corrective action isn't, oh, we got to fix all this dirt. We got to break down the scale. And this is where sustainable, regional, more local farming makes sense. That's how you feed people the healthiest, freshest fruits and vegetables and livestock that you can produce. You got to go small.
And it's got to be near them.
Yeah, because a farmer with a few hundred acres, well, not even, a farmer with a few tens of acres with livestock can rotate them in a way that keeps that soil healthy and keeps that soil growing and producing. The other breakdown is, where do they distribute and sell their finished product? It shouldn't be on a farmer necessarily to have to sell their wares, because everyone needs to eat. The no-brainer here is that schools and restaurants and institutions, hospitals, even prisons should be buying this food from a local, regional standpoint, because you got to feed the people.
How do you see both the chronic and acute levels of stress that we carry tie into both food systems or really just individual decisions that people are making about food?
Stress triggers hormonal reactions that create bad decisions. With enough cortisol and adrenaline consistently in your system, where it's not at levels where it's not supposed to be, you're generating hunger cues. The hunger cues that you're generating tend to be on high energy foods. High energy foods tend to be things that are carb or fat based. So I get a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, I have such a sweet tooth. And it's directly related to stress. Your body's like, I need sugar because I need energy because I'm in fight or flight. At any minute, the saber-toothed tiger, the T-Rex, the pterodactyl is going to swoop up out of the sky and snatch me off. Now, that's not true. But your amygdala doesn't know that. You just lost your keys. You're just late for a meeting. But your amygdala doesn't know that. And it's like, it has no nuance, whatever. She's like 0 to 100. So now you're stuck in this fight or flight pattern. Or,
yeah, you're like fueling for the journey that you're not about to make.
That it's not about to happen. So you're just stuck in a stress loop. Yeah. So not only is this keeping your respiration shallow, so you're not getting your O2. Not only are your blood vessels constricted, so your blood pressure is up. Not only do you have these hormones that are triggering other hormonal cascades that have you eating literally out of your mind and impacting your sleep, which triggers, again, these hunger hormones. You're just making bad choice after bad choice. Lack of empathy. You know, and people will be like, yeah, because so-and-so's salty all the time and they're always snapping off. Yeah, but also lack of empathy for self. Empathy for self would say, hey, maybe I need to dial this back, take a day off, get some rest, go to the gym, eat some salad or something. You don't have empathy for self. It's been shut down because you're in fight or flight. So yeah, the choice making that is directly related to stress keeps you in a state of disease, on top of the fact that you have physiological reasons creating conditions for disease because you're stuck in a stress response. It's a natural response. It serves a purpose. It's supposed to save your life, but you're not supposed to live there. You're supposed to live in your parasympathetic activation, which is rest and digest. You're supposed to be able to chill. People historically have worked very hard and then they sat down, you know? They celebrated. They rested. We don't do that anymore. And it gets complicated when you start adding things like neurodiversity on top of that. You know, what if you don't create enough dopamine so that even your successes don't feel good? You just now sort of this null state, looking for something to feel good. Well, what's legal, cheap, and everywhere? Fast food. It feels great. Double cheeseburger, hot off the grill with some fries and a Coke. Come on. That sounds good to me right now. And I'm feeling pretty chill. Yeah. So just imagine you're trying to feel something, what's legal, what's available, even at a child's level. Walk to the corner store, get some Skittles. sugar, lights up our brains like heroin. We're wired to like it. So the problem is it's available everywhere, literally everywhere.
How do you now navigate, earlier we were talking about the many irons you have in the fire, pots you have on the stove, if you will. How do you navigate those, wanting to be excellent, wanting them to have a positive impact on people, as you were mentioning, being high energy and important to you, but then also trying to make sure that you are in that right relationship with stress and able to make good choices around food and otherwise? Like, how do you strike that balance, or what's that practice look like?
So it's a balancing act. It requires you to be conscious and aware. It requires you to listen to yourself and watch yourself. I can only be as good to others as I am to myself. And for a long time, it was just output, output, output. I wanted to do more, be more for everybody and everything. And it got to the point where I couldn't even give who needed me anything. There was just nothing left. I was just empty. So I may have 3 or 4 irons in the fire, but they weren't getting the best of me. So again, my motivation isn't necessarily show up and get paid. It's impacting people's lives. If I'm not having that impact, then I need to start reevaluating some things. That means I've given too much. I need to pull back and focus on me. Decide, do I need to go to the gym or do I need to take a nap? I have an hour. Which one would best which one would best suit me right now? Did I get enough water? Have I called a friend? Have I touched grass? Have I seen sunshine? You know what I mean? Get real basic. That's like my checklist, actually. It's like when you get into those dark spaces and you're kind of burning yourself out, what are you eating? Tighten up. Are you drinking water? Are you hydrated? Are you giving yourself enough time to sleep? Which means you kind of have to wind down. There's extra time. It's not like your head hits the pillow and you pass out. You got to wind down, get some sleep. Are you involved in nature and moving your body? And then have you loved and laughed? Have you made a human or some kind of dog, cat, rabbit connection? Those 5 things can save your life. When you feel like you're drowning, when things are impossible, those 5 things can save your life. And so that's my immediate checklist. Work on those 5 things.
Yeah.
Everything else falls to the side. Laundry, lawn care, whatever. Work on those 5 things.
Yeah, that reminds me of the old adage. You got to figure out, of all the balls you're juggling, which one are rubber and they'll bounce back, which ones are glass and you can't let them slip. And one of those glass balls, when people are talking about that, is often parenting and relationship with kids. And you were talking earlier about, from the moment we're small, sugar's thrust upon us. And I think if I had to pinpoint who's the target audience of this podcast, I always say it's the sandwich generation. It's people who likely have kids at home, parents who are still alive. They're in careers, maybe both partners are in careers where they could spend all their time working and trying to make money. So they're busy. They feel impingement on their time, but also they know that they're at risk of missing things that are important, whether it's from health, whether it's their way of being in the world, their experience of things. And it's hard when you are feeling that constriction consistently, that you're carrying that level of stress, as you mentioned. And one of those points can definitely be feeding children. And so that was a long segue into thinking about what y'all are doing with Small Bites. And then this process, I love what you say around raising veggie-ready kids.
Yes.
I have almost 4-year-old, 2.5-year-old. And a lot of times the color diet that they want is like beige.
It's beige. They're in the beige diet.
And we're working, and I'm doing my best and trying to be conscious of it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what do you see parents kind of commonly struggling with? What are y'all trying to do with Small Bites to fix this? And what are some approaches to raise veggie-ready kids?
So 70% of kids are in childcare, under school age children. And that's a lot of kids. And so with Small Bites, we have classroom ready turnkey tools so that teachers, administrators, even parent volunteers can immediately start with food education in a way that's age appropriate, that aligns with learning standards, but gives kids hands-on experiences with food. It's about exposure, exposure, exposure. And just like anyone who's in early childhood education knows, you've got, your first 1,000 days of literacy for reading, for math. This is food literacy. This is your first 1,000 days of food literacy. The impact on this, it's kind of too early to know, but what I suspect is going to happen based upon research and my own anecdotes is we've now laid the foundation for internalized knowledge and positive experiences around fruits and vegetables at a time where kids are forming their palate, where they've never had anything before. And the first things that they get to experience are kale, cucumbers, peppers. That's going to stick with them. And I know that with most public health things, there's a upward absorption, that's not the right word, in families. So if you expose a child to, hey, you got to wear seatbelts, then the child becomes the advocate in the family, and the family's now wearing seatbelts. Hey, smoking is bad, things of that nature. So here we have kids going, hey, I like fruits and vegetables, and parents scrambling to go get them because it's like, what? You'll actually eat this? Yeah, they will actually eat it. I did my thesis on picky eating, and I'm going to just, in a broad stroke, say if you're not dealing with sensory issues or developmental issues in a child, I'm tempted to say even 90% of the so-called picky behavior is adult-led. Children are curious. They do have some neophobia, which, they are reluctant to try new things, but that's also on a spectrum based on personality type. Some people are just risk averse. Some people are more exploratory. But capitalizing on a child's innate curiosity, and they love to eat. There's not a lot they have control over, but they can put things in their mouth. They love to eat. Using what is naturally there in a child and just giving them time to express it and experience it is how they kind of grow into learning about their world. Food is just part of the world. Now, whether it's healthy or not, now these are labels that we've started putting on food. Is it really food or not? Is your job as a parent to decide. Is that chicken nugget food? I don't know. Read the label. How much of that is actually just chicken and how much of it is all these other ingredients? Is that macaroni and cheese food? Did you make it? Did you buy it? Was it prepackaged? Where's the dirt? How close is the food you're giving your kids? How close is that food to the dirt? That's your job. Your job is to model. Your job is to make meal times comfortable. And your job is to make them predictable so that they have like a little biorhythm going on. And your job is to offer actual food. It's the child's job to select from what you've offered what they're going to eat and how much they're going to eat. Their stomach is the size of their fist. We're making plates for like linebackers. And even the kid will look at it and be like, whoa, I don't want it. And you get this immediate rejection. It's overwhelm. They have teeny tiny little stomachs. They eat frequently. We have this weird built-in irritation. Like my toddler's always grazing. They're supposed to. I would encourage every parent to tap in to resources that educators have available about age-appropriate development. It will save you, especially when they become teenagers and pre-adolescents, it will save you so much drama if you know what's age-appropriate. Toddlers graze. Encourage it. Give them great options to graze from. Some people take those ice cube trays and fill it with all these different options or whatever. However you got to do it. They're going to be hungry every 3 hours because they have tiny stomachs. That's it. When you get older, you have a larger capacity to hold more and you can go longer in between meals. But that has also been conditioned in us because we work these 9 to 5 kind of factory hours and we need people working, not eating. On the flip side of that, when we get to the other end of the spectrum and I'm dealing with people with uncontrolled blood sugar, now we want them to eat like toddlers again so that they have more regulated blood sugar and not these peaks and valleys that come from eating twice a day. Just stick with what works. And we don't have to go through all of this 40 years later. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much of what we've covered so far has been what you can do at home. Mm-hmm. And I know with Small Bites Adventure Club, you all are covering, the meals that happen in schools and institutions and outside of the home. How has that been trying to break into a market that I would imagine has not been the healthiest place historically, and almost shifting minds and ways of being and hearts towards veggie readiness and more healthy habits and fruits and vegetables. What does that look like?
I would say the early child education realm is probably the easiest one. They want to work with you. They want resources. They want to impact these children in a positive way. And there's a lot less red tape than trying to go through like a school system or a school district where things have to be flown up the flagpole and then run back down. We still have ability to do that, but with ECEs, because they're a lot of times independently owned and operated, yes, I want that for my kids, and it's done. And the way that Small Bites is created is because it's turnkey. Once you open the box, it's immediately successful. Teachers need to know how to cook. They don't need to be confident and competent around doing food education experiences, but they will become that very quickly because of the way these kits are designed. And then the kids are 100%. They're all in. There's positive peer pressure when you have a group where a picky child may not, the child that's picky at home won't be picky at school because everybody else is doing it. It's just been kind of normalized. Like, yeah, I do what we all do because we're a classroom and we roll like that. So you can use that positive peer pressure to really have a high uptake and a high acceptance rate with the kids in a class setting. I had a student this wasn't a Small Bites classroom, but it was my after school program, and I had pre-K, and there was this one little girl, Priya, who would be engaged in the activity because, of course, kids love activities, but she would never try the food. And I had these kids from January through May of this particular year, and it wasn't until that last week that she tried the food. And when I say it was a triumph, it was like, oh my God, Priya tried the food. Priya ate the food. Her dad came in. Priya ate the food. Priya ate the food. Everybody's like, yay, Priya ate the food. But this is what happens with repeat exposure. It becomes less scary. It becomes normalized. It becomes, hey, this is just what we do. And so Small Bites does that. Like, hey, here's a new food. It's not scary. We're going to explore it. And then parents get the same information sent home. You build this bridge. Like, hey, I tried it today. Well, what did you try? Oh, it was a kale salad. So now parents are like, oh, you eat kale? Well, that just opens up a whole nother avenue. And now parents are eating it with the kids as well. And it just, evolves into, now we eat kale. Is it healthy? It doesn't matter. We eat kale.
What in the Small Bites process has surprised you when you've been in the schools, you've been in the early childhood education centers, running these demonstrations, classes, programs for kids, exposing them to things? What did you not expect to find that you've experienced?
The overwhelming love that the teachers have for the kids. Teachers get a lot of resources. Administrators will come in. This is the new curriculum. This is the new this is the new that. And that stuff will just sit on a desk or in a closet. Small Bites, as soon as the box shows up, the kids are psyched. The teachers are ready. And they just love it. I mean, we knew we had a good thing, but just the way that teachers come out of their way to be like, this is the best thing ever. Like, because they're learning with the kids, which as a educator, that's some of the best like mojo you can have going on in your classroom where you're all exploring it together. That is so fun. And they're learning, and then they're like, we're eating healthier. I'm eating healthier. Like even some of the programs we have set up. Oh, there's another initiative I'm working on with Open Hand and the Common Market, which we've included Small Bites, but we're doing produce deliveries to ECEs and having them do like menu change to reflect the harvest of the month. Like that's the type of work that's happening. And so now the entire center is eating kale. The entire center is being exposed to kale 4 times in a month. And the parents are being exposed. So it's a beautiful thing when you see it all coming together. You're like, yeah, that's how it should be. Like we're changing families, we're changing communities, we're changing entire schools, one meal at a time. But the love that the teachers have has just been amazing. Like they really genuinely love the product.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if you're them, especially know it's doing a good thing for the kids, and then a hands-on activity that they're going to be excited about. And it's going to feed them.
Mm-hmm. And it's a resource that you can tap back into for like the entire month. Like there's so much in it that you just kind of touch it again and again and again and incorporate it into your curriculum in an easy way. Like it's a real low entry for teachers in their day and in their planning and everything that they have to do. So I think, and shout out to Jenna Mobley because she is our teacher, she is our educator, she is our classroom specialist, and she ensures that this is very teacher forward. I mean, it's child focused, but it's very teacher forward.
Yeah, that's great. And I will put in the show notes for anybody who wants to check out more about Small Bites. But I know, firsthand that it's exciting work that you all are doing.
It is. And we just graduated our first set of veggie-ready kids. So that's also giving these sites and these teachers certification. They're veggie-ready teachers. And what that means is they completed a 5-month program where they got the kit every month. They got all the resources and the tools so they can continue doing food education even without additional kits. But they've gone through the process of learning how to become a food educator. The kids have gone through the process of exploring these foods, and now they're veggie ready. Like they're bosses at this. They're good at eating vegetables, and they've embraced it as part of their little lifestyle. But the teachers and the sites are certified as well, and so that's exciting.
Yeah, I love veggie ready kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great moniker. May you all be successful in that.
Thank you. And it's kind of like, oh, you're 5, you're veggie ready before you start kindergarten. Like that's cool.
Cool.
Another little graduation moment.
I got a bunch of follow-ups from that.
Okay.
Let's go on picky eating first.
Okay.
You mentioned that picky eating is something that adults are passing on to kids or modeling for kids. What does that look like? How can we as parents not project picky eating onto our kids or create the conditions that lead to picky eating?
One of the behaviors that I see early on is you'll offer a child something that they may not have had before or in a way they haven't had before. And as soon as they put it in their mouth, you're like, do you like it? They don't know. They don't even know. Remember, they're 3. They don't know if they like it or not. Let them process it. Let them have it 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more times. Half of that time they may eat it, half of the time they won't. But they're still processing. I call it the eggplant file. I think I have a book called How to Feed a Kid, a parent's guide, and I talk about that in there. When you give a kid an eggplant, even when you show a kid an eggplant, they create a file on their desktop in their brain, label it eggplant. A couple of things come up. 1, it doesn't look like an egg. 2, it doesn't look like a plant. I don't trust it. So then you're like, we're going to cook this eggplant and we're going to do X, Y, Z. So you give the kid the opportunity to come in, maybe use their knife to help cut it up or watch you cook it. Again, it's looking real suspect. This is clearly not a chicken nugget. It's not mac and cheese. I'm not feeling it, not going to eat it. And they may not. The next time you're like, hey, you know how you like spaghetti sauce? The marinara? Well, we're going to put that on the eggplant with some Parmesan cheese. And the kid's like, okay, I like marinara. I like Parmesan.
Can I just eat the cheese?
Yeah. It's like, okay, I'll let you put this in front of me. And then they proceed to eat the cheese off and not the eggplant. Great. But now we got to tick on the yes box, right? Like, okay, cheese on eggplant. I'll do that. But all that other stuff you did, absolutely not. And it goes on and on and on until there's enough information in there for them to decide if they like it or not. But by then we've gone by the texture, the fact that you've cooked it 2 or 3 different ways and it didn't look the same. There's all this like, I don't know about that. And if eggplant keeps showing up over time, it gets just normalized. This is just something we do. And then it doesn't matter if we like it or not. What we do as a family is we eat eggplant, and it's been accepted. So I think that's part of the problem is going in on this, do you like it, do you not? The other is exposing kids to too much too soon. Because again, they're processing. And they naturally, age appropriate, go on these food jags. They'll eat blueberries for like a month straight, and then all of a sudden be like, ew, I hate blueberries. So on brand for a little kid. Just be ready for it. I'm like, okay, what would you like? I don't know. I just don't want blueberries. All right. I've had physicians, pediatricians, in 2 different presentations stand up and clap when I say, again, developmentally on track, all of that. A hungry kid will eat when they're hungry, and they'll stop when they're not. So unless you've got, your pediatrician worried about your kid's weight, or you're dealing with some sensory or developmental issues or something like that, something medical or emotional going on. If your kid is like tracking, they'll eat when they're hungry. Stop stressing these kids over making this clean plate club. We have overeaters as adults because of the pressure from the clean plate club. And that is because parents were raised that way. That is because parents with very little time spent 30 minutes in the kitchen throwing together some food that they thought you were going to eat. And now you're sitting up here stonewalling and I don't want to waste time and I don't want to waste my money and you're just ungrateful. Whoa, that's a you problem. That has nothing to do with your 3-year-old. Your 3-year-old's not even concerned about how your day was. They're just glad to be home, eating at a mealtime in a place that's safe. And yeah, they genuinely don't like what you made. It's not personal. It's not about you. Stop making it about you, parents. Your job is to feed them. And if they don't want to eat, move on with your life. Yeah. In the real sense, like meal times are short. We like, as adults, to sit around and linger or whatever, but kids eat to serve a purpose and then they move on. If you've ever eaten with teenagers, you know, like Sunday dinner, which you spent all day preparing, is a 10-minute affair because they will wolf that food down and then they're gone.
Yeah, it hurts.
You thought you were going to sit and catch up, and no, none of that. They're going to eat, and then they're going to get back on their phone and get back in the group chat, going on with their little teenage life. So I think parents have to recognize what they're bringing to the table and what they're making tense and what they're making a problem, because it's not a problem for a 3-year-old. They're either going to eat or they're not. They either like it or they don't. It's real clear for them. They have a
small stomach
the size of their fist.
And I laughed when you said we're giving them linebacker portions, like guilty giving too much food for sure. So do we want to, well, I'll tell you my approach and you can please tell me how I'm wrong. Or it could be better. I would tend to put enough of different options on the plate such that if they picked and choose what they wanted to eat, they would get full. But it's unlikely that they're going to finish everything on the plate because in aggregate, it's too much. Mm-hmm. And I think what I would be trying to promote is optionality and choice. But I can see, and I hadn't really considered that, like, the amount of food might seem staggering. And
even the choices may be a lot. That's sort of a level of executive functioning that may not be firing at that age. You know, it's like, I got 5 choices. Maybe I only needed 3.
Yeah. Is there kind of a right number that you would suggest? I mean, is it like, do you want to do a protein, starch, and a vegetable? Like how do you think about kind of a rough checklist? Again, for like somebody who's like out and about in the world and then trying to do right at dinner, but they didn't spend all day on it.
Yeah. I am a big advocate of setting the pattern for macros so that they know what to eat. I'm always like, bears teach their kids how to eat. Birds teach their kids how to eat. We don't teach our kids how to eat. So yeah, I want vegetables, I want protein, and I want carbs because that's what you need to live. Everything else and how it's presented, completely up to whatever. But those are the boxes that I'm checking. And if you're feeding kids, a lot of pediatricians, if you want a journal, say, look at it at a week at a time, not a day at a time, because they do weird things like live on yogurt for 24 hours or something. You know what I mean? So you want to look at what they're eating over the week, not necessarily day to day. And in my mind, I'm running a checklist of when's the last time I saw you eat a vegetable? When's the last time I saw you eat fruit? When's the last time, you had protein that was relatively whole, not chopped up, minced up, and turned into a nugget?
Yeah.
And I will say, as someone who is in the sandwich generation, this isn't an every night thing. Currently, we just finished basketball season. My 9th grader made varsity. They have 6 a.m. practices. 9th graders don't drive. That's a long day for a kid because they also have practice after school. Do you think this kid's not eating Chick-fil-A? Absolutely he's eating Chick-fil-A, because how else was he going to eat? You know, what else was the option? I'm not saying you have to be at home cooking every day, but I am saying you need a running tab of what your kids are eating so you can help them balance it out.
Yeah. When's the last time you ate a vegetable metric? When is that a problem?
I'm like, Wednesday is sort of my day to kind of like look ahead and look back. Where are we in this week? And then I can adjust from there. I tend to cook like weekend cooking. So that's where I know vegetables are going to happen. But if there's a game Monday night and you got practices on Tuesday and then Wednesday your sister has dance, by Thursday I'm kind of like, okay, when's the last time you had a vegetable? And if not, then here's some fruit. Like, we're going to keep it moving. We're going to have something raw and crunchy in your life and keep it moving. But again, these are seasons. Basketball season ends. Dance season ends. So those are opportunities for us to regroup. Vacations are opportunities to regroup when the kids are out of school, and it's not like this week the kids are out of school. So it's not so harried and crazy. I can intentionally cook. I can intentionally meal plan better than the weeks when I can't. But again, it's a balancing act. So my teenager has a friend at school, same age, and he has a younger sister, and they're all into sports, and their mom is on Facebook. Hey, Miss Bradley. And she's kind of like asking that same question, like, how am I supposed to juggle this? And I said, well, speaking now of having one who's kind of left the nest, he cooks. He cooks. He goes through pounds of spinach and kale. He's eating eggs and chicken, lots of salmon. This kid never ate salmon living with me. And I never really saw him cook that much, but I cook all the time. And he's kind of fearless in the kitchen because he was around it. He's been exposed to real food. These things have been normalized as this is what we eat. Fast food is the alternative, but this is how we eat. And he has learned how to feed himself because that's what was presented to him for 20 years. You got protein, you got veg, you got carb. And that's how he patterns his food. And so I was telling Ms. Bradley, give him time. Yeah, you might be in a Chick-fil-A season, but you live and you model and you demonstrate how they're supposed to eat. Give them time. Yeah. It's a long arc. 18 years simultaneously goes by so fast, but it's like the longest period of time because you have so much that you're like locked in on and so much you have to teach and so much you have to self-regulate and grow and learn in order to be a better person for them. And then you get to see what they do with all of that.
What do you say about the negotiation around trying a bite or trying something, or I want more mac and cheese? All right, you can have that if you eat a little more of your chicken first or whatever it is. And if that doesn't work, then what should parents consider replacing it with?
So if you're giving them an amount of food that's not overwhelming, it's entirely likely that they will ask for more of something. And you got to gauge this with how much pushback you're creating with your kids. Mine really didn't give me a whole lot. I'd be like, finish your broccoli and you can have more mac and cheese. Because again, I'm doing a check. You haven't had any vegetables today. So you get that done and you can have whatever else. But we're literally talking like you've got 2 tablespoons of food here. Finish your broccoli. It's totally doable versus, having like a cup of broccoli on their plate. They're like, I can't eat all that. I don't want to. But if you've got 2 or 3 bites that you can get through and then you can have more mac and cheese, okay, fine. And you want children to recognize when they're full. And so it's okay to give them a little less and let them know it's okay to ask for more. I don't believe really in getting into these, I'm cooking a separate meal for the kids things. I think that sets a really bad precedent. If it's just like, I know they're not going to eat spinach, so I'm going to steam some broccoli, then okay. But yeah, the chicken's the chicken. The potatoes are the potatoes. I'm not doing separate meals. I just might tweak it a little bit. With older kids, rearrange your refrigerator in your pantry. If you don't want to argue about Oreos, don't buy them, first of all. The argument's a moot point. If you don't want to argue about ice cream, make it a special thing that you go out of the house to get. And don't keep it stocked. We have our houses stocked like Kroger. Don't do that because you don't want your kid eating everything that's in Kroger. Rearrange your refrigerator so the stuff that's at their eye level is the stuff you want them to eat. So if they're on this snacking jag and they go in there and they grab a string cheese and some washed grapes, I don't care. Well, what if that ruins their appetite for dinner? I don't care. Wait, really? String cheese and grapes? I'm going to be mad because you're not, okay, fine. You're still going to sit down and eat. I'm going to make you a little plate. You do what you do with it. And then we're going to move on because this is dinner time and we use a family, particularly with young kids. But you got to pick your battles. If they're not getting full on Cheetos and Takis and Hostess cakes and stuff like that, then, why do you care? You're full on fruit. Okay. What am I complaining about? Oh, you had hummus and carrot sticks. Okay. Go ahead, knock yourself out. So I did a presentation once and a lady was like, my daughter's a really picky eater. She'll only eat green beans and broccoli and collard greens and everything else is chicken nuggets. I said, how old is your daughter? And she said 5. I said, so she takes the keys out of your purse and drives to McDonald's and gets chicken nuggets. She's like, no, that's me. I said, then she's not the problem. You are. And she came down after the fact. She's like, I was mad at you. She's like, I was actually hot. And then I realized you're absolutely right. They can't eat what you don't bring home. They can't eat what you don't buy them. So again, make sure you're just giving them food, and then let them eat or not.
Are there any other small tweaks or easy tweaks that have, significant impact that you have seen families make or would counsel parents to make in how they do things and role model for their kids, or how they're actually, feeding their kids or otherwise?
What you eat is what they're watching. You can talk about eating vegetables all day long, but if they've never seen you do it, they're not going to do it. And it's not that, vegetables are the end all be all. I mean, just the balance and how your relationship with food is. We've seen generations and generations, particularly of female dieters, impacting their female children. So now you don't have a healthy relationship around food. My advice to parents is look at your relationship with food. Is it healthy? Under eating, overeating, binging, whatever your thing is. Work with that because they're going to eat what you eat. Get your kids in the kitchen. You don't have to know how to cook. You could be a lousy cook, okay? Get your kids in the kitchen with you, because this is a life skill. And there's all kinds of math and science involved, and kids are very tactile and they love to do it, but they have ownership about what they've created. So if, we're having rice for dinner and, colleague, come measure the rice. Now that she's older, she's 8, go ahead and wash the rice. Put the rice in the rice cooker. That's Kylie's rice. If she ain't gonna eat nothing at night, she gonna eat that rice, okay? Same thing with the green beans. If, little Bobby's coming in and, trimming the green beans and puts his little hands in and drops them in the pan, those are Bobby's green beans. If he doesn't eat nothing else, he's going to eat that. And it doesn't have to be every night. It doesn't have to be every meal. But the kids need to have some ownership. If your kids are a little older, you can take the onus of meal planning off of you by getting them involved. I think when you and I talked on the phone, I was like, I've been answering what's for dinner for 20 years. Things you don't think about when you sign up to be a parent. 20 years of what's for dinner. I don't care anymore. I just wanted to check certain markers and for us not to yell. That's what I want. So I'll ask, Sunday's my planning day. What do you guys want to eat this week? And I'll adjust accordingly. Well, we don't really have time for this and this, so we'll hit it on the weekend. Yeah, I can prep this here and there. What kind of vegetable are we throwing with it, guys? Just field it out and let them fill in the blanks. That's just less I have to think about. And then you start to find out what it is you make your kids actually like. And that's kind of interesting too. You may be assuming one thing, but they're like, I really like that pot roast that you did that one time. It's like, oh, okay, now you're building memories, it's kind of cool. That's nice to know that they have favorites.
So I want to indulge the voice that I'm imagining might be in the back of some listeners' heads. And at a couple points that we've been talking about. One is maybe, everything that you're saying sounds good on picky eaters. I've tried giving my kid a bunch of stuff and the diet is still beige. Like what my kid wants is chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. And I'm afraid that if I don't give them that, they won't eat. What do you say to that person? Like what's one thing to try or one thing to do?
Pair something beloved with something less beloved. So we're going to do chicken nuggets, we're going to do mac and cheese, and we're going to do green beans. We're going to do chicken nuggets. We're going to do mac and cheese. We're going to do sliced apples. The safe food is comfortable, even expected. And don't be surprised if kids don't like a lot of variety. Why would they? There's nothing broken here. It's chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. It works. Why do you keep trying to mess it up? You know what I mean? But there's also, I'm setting a pattern, and we always eat vegetables. They'll always be on your plate. We eat fruits. They will always be made available to you. So, and then back off. They're eating. They're growing. They're gaining weight. Make sure you make healthy options as available as possible. Make sure you're also eating them. Make sure you're sharing them as you're eating them. Sometimes it is as simple as, I'm eating a grapefruit. You want some of this? And they'll eat 1 or 2 pieces and then they'll go on about their day. But at least they ate it. You've got 18 years. That's a long time, maybe longer. They don't have to be perfect at this by age 6. And you're putting way too much pressure on you and on them by trying to have it perfect by age 6. There's a lot that's not perfect by age 6. They can barely use scissors, okay? So let's get this thing kind of in some sort of balance. They're going to hit an age, especially if they're active children, where they're genuinely hungry. And that's going to take a lot of that load off of you. My 15-year-old, I swear all the child ate from age 2 to maybe 12 was just chicken. He would eat collard greens and he would eat broccoli. But that meant that I was cooking a lot of collard greens and a lot of broccoli. That was probably the vegetable that showed up the most because all 3 of the kids would eat collard greens and broccoli. Okay, they'd have it 2-3 times a week. The variety gets really small and you might be bored personally, but if they're eating it, it's fine. They don't need variety, they need nutrition. You will get bored of it. You will absolutely get bored of it. And maybe that's how people get into that 2 dinner thing, but I don't have time for that. As long as they're nutritionally sound, keep it moving. But what happened around 12, he hit that growth spurt. And all of a sudden, he was more interested in eating food. Didn't matter what it was, whether he liked it or not. Like the other day, he ate salmon.
Yeah, the word burning furnace in there was saying, feed me.
Eat.
Yeah.
Eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, for any women who've carried children, you remember what it's like being pregnant and hungry. It's a different kind of hunger. That's where they're going with that. They will eat anything. He ate salmon completely, the whole dish with like rice and whatever, had sauces and stuff on it. He ate the whole thing. Was like, I don't like salmon. Plate clean. Okay, noted. It doesn't matter. He's hungry. He is about 6 feet tall right now. He's hungry. Yeah. Use that to your advantage. This is where you start introducing other things because they're going to give you a lot less pushback. Also, look at their brain development. We're past that fear stage of food. In fact, they've probably done some hard things in life at this point. Won something, lost something, tried out for something. Some things have happened between 9, 12, 13 where they've just developed more tolerance. So now they're willing to tolerate some of this food you keep pushing at them. Yeah. Some of them bloom and they become very exploratory. Some of them become like little gastronomic, just like they just love food all of a sudden. And it's part the science, the art, the creativity, something that, again, they can do. So with the toddlers, it's I can feed myself. But with your tweens, it's I can cook. That's a very adult thing to do. And then with your later teens, your early 20s, I am an adult. I'm self-sufficient. Look at me providing for myself. This is just brain development. This is just growth. But cooking food has a place all along that trail that if you're cognizant of where your kid is, you can use food as a tool versus this like teacher-student dynamic that kids kind of balk against when it comes to their parents anyway. Now it becomes this medium where I meet you halfway. And it can be kind of cool and fun. Like having a hobby or something in common. Sure. We all got to eat. So gauging your kid, how involved do they want to be in this eating process?
Yeah, that's cool to think about it as a shared hobby, to reflect you trying new things too, sharing how you feel about them as you go.
Yeah, I've suggested here in Atlanta, we have the DeKalb Farmers Market. Especially if you've got multiple kids, y'all pick a country, pick a couple ingredients, read up about it, have them report back to you. Well, how do the people in Guatemala eat that? And then go buy it, try to make it, watch some videos on it. It can be a whole thing. And you really can be hands off on this project-based learning thing. You can really be hands off and let the kids lead it. Another thing to bring awareness around food is, again, when you have multiple kids, you're not always going to want to take them shopping. But sometimes take them to the grocery store. Can you measure out 2 pounds of green beans? Can you find the cheapest can of black beans by the sign, the per ounce, and have them work through these real life situations, thinking out loud, well, 1 pound of hamburger meat isn't going to be enough spaghetti sauce for 5 people. We're going to need 2 pounds. Like just having this kind of conversation going so that your kids are learning how to feed themselves. And food doesn't just magically come out of the microwave every day. Yeah.
And then you mentioned, a major thing that parents might need to do is fix their own relationship with food. Mm-hmm. If someone was hearing that and thinking, feeling a little convicted. I might have something to fix with my relationship to food. How do you start that? How do you interrogate that? How do you, think about some of those shifts that might move you more into right relationship?
The pressure you felt as a kid, when you see it coming up at the table, when you see yourself getting angry, because why are you angry? Your child is rejecting this food that you made, but why are you angry? That's where you need to work on that relationship. The story that comes out of that, well, because they're ungrateful, because I spent all this time, because I spent all this money, because you've been conditioned to believe that food is love. You've been conditioned to believe that this is an obligation that a parent has to do. You've been conditioned to believe that somehow acceptance of this food is acceptance of you. Or you've been conditioned to believe you have to eat it all because this is a scarce resource. Are you coming from a scarcity mindset, knowing that we throw away, 4,000 pounds of food per person in the United States every year? That may not be statistically correct, but it's something like that. Some obscene amount of food. We don't have a lack of food. We have a lack of accessibility. We have a lack of distribution. We have a lack of affordability, but we don't have a lack of food. And for folks who grew up in the Clean Plate Club, particularly if they were food insecure and food is tied to finance, food is tied to money, your food has been bought and sold multiple times before you got it from Piggly Wiggly. Trust me. You're paying 100% retail price on this. Somebody has made profit off of this at least twice, unless you went to the farm and bought it yourself. So this whole idea of, this is my money and this is the value that it holds. No, it doesn't. It doesn't hold that value at all. It's been bought and sold. What you're paying for is the fact that somebody grew it, killed it, packaged it, chilled it, and made it convenient for you to just come in and pick it up. You're not paying for the chicken. You're paying for everything that happened to the chicken. Okay? So and I'm not advocating food waste, but we've got to disassociate food and finance. They're not necessarily one and the same. And sometimes that can liberate people from the kind of irrational anger that they have for their kids wasting food. They're not wasting it, they're full. They don't want to eat anymore. Also, is your food good? Let's start with that. Do you enjoy eating it? Because if you don't like it, what makes you think they're going to like it and they have more taste buds than you do? Let's just start with that. Is it good food? Because that might be half the battle. But if you can attest that, this is decent, then just back off. Let the kids experience being nourished, being loved, and then move on. Dinner is just not the deal breaker. That's not the hill you want to die on. That's not the relationship you want with your kids. You want to sit down at meal times and just connect over food. And that is what builds the story. That's what they're going to remember. That's what's going to bring them back to the table. When I was doing my research, there was this interesting little study done in the UK that said teenagers that ate with their parents as a family once per week. It didn't have to be homemade and it didn't even have to be at home. But if they ate as a family once per week, they had lower incidence of all these things like truancy from school. They had better test scores. They were less likely to use drugs. And it was just interesting. Now, granted, it was one small study. But that's interesting that we can have a level of connection over a meal. It could be pizza at Fellini's. But that one thing keeps you feeling tethered. I mean, imagine being a teenager right now.
Tough look.
Yeah. But if just a pizza at Fellini's with your siblings and your mom and dad or whoever's in your family, if that's enough to keep you tethered, it's worth it.
Yeah, it's like the simple things that you said earlier. If you get your health, you get your sunlight, get your sleep, touch the grass, eat a meal with loved ones. And what I'm experiencing is, in listening to this and thinking about my own parenting, is so often I see food and meal times as a thing to get right. And it needs to go a certain way for me to be good, right? And to be a good parent, as much as it is for their health, if I'm objective. And what I'm hearing and will take away from this is set the conditions and then release the specific outcomes.
Release the expectations.
Release the expectations that it goes a certain way, but keep setting the right conditions and then just show up and be there with them at the table and trust that it'll be okay if they don't really touch the dinner and then eat a bunch of pistachios and cheese before bed, but they had the vegetable on the plate.
Brain food, pistachios and cheese, not mad at it.
Yeah, it could be worse. It could be worse. And then for the last question, I'm curious how you think about this moment that we're in as we relate to food, and maybe what you're optimistic about, what you're worried about. And I would say it might just be my particular pocket of the internet, but in some ways there seems to be more focus on things like metabolic health, microplastics, removing the dyes, trying to have inputs that are going to be more literally life-giving. Mm-hmm. But in other ways, we know that that focus might be required because we got a big deficit. We're coming in with a big deficit based on how we've done things for the last 50 or 60 years. How are you feeling about the moment that we're in and the trajectory that things are on? What are you optimistic about? What are you worried about? And what's kind of a hope or word you would offer related to that?
I think it would be cool if people got more involved in policy, because that's what we have is what's been allowed. And if the cereal and the snacks that we produce in this country can't be distributed in other countries because of ingredients that are in them, then we need that kind of protection for us. If they're banning seed oils and red number 40, then why aren't we? Where's the policy protecting the people? So there's a policy problem. Where we're protecting manufacturers and the status quo. We're not protecting the health of the people. That's a public health crisis, which is what we're in with the metabolic health issues, particularly insulin resistance and diabetes. It's just like off the charts. But I feel if people got involved in policy, then the policy would have to change. Most people aren't even aware of the policy. So it's a you don't know what you don't know situation. I feel like public health is at a crisis point. A lot of it is culturally induced. We do have lax policies when it comes to what people can eat and drink. We do have subsidized foodstuffs that maybe shouldn't be. We do have a farming and a food distribution system that's out of balance. Those are big fish to fry. And again, people will check out because they're like, what can I do about that?
I'm an accountant still.
Still an accountant. Still got 3 kids and 3 sports. Yeah. Still got to get dinner on the table in 20 minutes.
But it has broccoli on the plate.
Right. But it does have broccoli on the plate. And I think that's where you start. Yeah. You start there and people are like, well, what about organic? What about local? If you can, do. If you can't, focus on what you can. Your power isn't in what you can't control. Your power is in what you can control. Double down on that. The organic question comes up a lot, and I'll be like, what is it you eat the most of? Like I said, we were broccoli and collard greens for a minute. Like those were the 2 vegetables that were going to fly. Then maybe I need to get those organic. Maybe I need to get those local. Maybe I need to try and grow them myself or get them from someone who I know is growing them, because those are 2 vegetables we were going to eat a lot. Just start there. Yeah. Just start with what you can do and go from there. And you'll be surprised. You'll start showing up at farmers markets and you start meeting farmers and you start meeting other people who think like you. And someone's going to recommend a podcast and someone's going to recommend a newsletter. Someone's going to recommend Swanson Family Farm. And now you got half a cow that's Georgia grown, Georgia raised, grass finished, sitting in your deep freezer. That's how it happens. You start with collard greens, you end up with a cow. You change the whole way you eat. Now you got chickens in your backyard or whatever. But just start where you are. There's a myth perpetuated that eating healthy is more expensive. And I've walked through classes and classes of showing people with food flyers, like the Kroger sales flyer, how that's simply not true. Don't let people lie to you. Get out here and price this stuff out yourself. Yeah, you can feed a family of 5 off of, say, $25 and it be balanced. It's possible, it's doable, and I've done it. So just don't take everything at face value. And reprioritize those 5 things. Will
you say them once more?
The 5 things are, your nutrition, your food, your hydration, your water, your sleep, your connection and movement in nature. So moving your body, and especially moving your body in nature. And then having a loving connection with other people for other creatures. You've got to have somebody who looks at you and smiles, even if that's just a bunny. My bunny doesn't smile, but he does flick his ears at me. So
yeah, I
know he's happy to see me. And then he hops over and it's like, hey, bunny. So you got to have those 5 things.
Earlier when you said that about your shallow breaths, I was like, all right, deep breath. And it's just like, I just need to hear that over and over.
Over and over.
And thanks for sharing your light with us and with everybody. So I appreciate you coming on.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was great.
Thanks.
That's our episode of Macon Atlanta. Thank you for watching and listening. As always, if you haven't yet, please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're listening today. We'll be in conversation with more great folks from Atlanta. If you've got suggestions for people you want to hear on the show, please reply, shoot us a comment. Otherwise, always like hearing from listeners. And thank you very much for journeying with us. Good luck out there. You're doing great.